Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to You Can Talk. This is Ruth Finney, and we are here this morning to talk about church folk. My intention was to, sort of do this in a 30-minute class session. But I'm going to have to extend it out a little bit more because I had a lot that I kind of wanted to say about it. So I'm going to be covering it. I'm going to start this talk off today. A lot of people have been hurt in the church. A lot of people have dealt with issues in the church, whether you've been, in the church for a short period of time or whether you grew up in the church, been in the church your whole life, right? If you've been in the church and you've had to deal with people and you know that there can be some issues and some challenges having to deal with church folk, right? So a huge reason that people struggle with the church and the struggle with religion and struggle with the idea of accepting God and all of that is because of the people in the church, right? It's the people in the church. It's not the church itself most of the time. Good morning, Levi. How are you this morning? Good to see you. Welcome in. I appreciate you being here. We're talking about church folk this morning, okay? People are not easy to get along with in general, right? Whether you're saved or unsaved. And a lot of times it's the people that run other people off from the church, right? And so it can be very difficult. It can be a very difficult thing to try to figure out how to talk to people, how to live with people, move with people. We live in a society now where we are becoming more and more isolated from, having to interact with each other, communicate with each other, right? We can be in our homes, if you think about it, and never really have to go out because all of our needs can be met by just staying here at home, right? We can, get our groceries from home. We can educate ourselves from home. We can, even see the doctor from home. We can, do anything that we need, basically, have everything delivered to us and, work from home, all of it. We really rarely have to leave home. A lot of us, especially since COVID has happened, probably go out of our homes less and less. And the church is really sort of becoming the same way, where people are becoming more and more isolated and backing away from the assembling and gathering of themselves into the church because they don't want to have to deal with the people. We're getting where we don't hardly interact with people that we work with. We don't hardly interact with our neighbors. And we're getting where we don't hardly interact with people in the church, right? So, And that has been a huge evolution of change over the years, because back in the day, forgive me, back in the day, church was a gathering place. It was a place of refuge. It was a safe place. It was a place that, people looked forward to going to so that they could interact with others. It was a social gathering. It was a place where you could go and get support and hope and encouragement and love. You could get help. You could get guidance. You could receive services. You could go and, like I say, it was just a place of refuge. You could go and be sharpened and be loved on and guided and just a place where you could leave and feel uplifted and be ready and be prepared to go back out into the world and face all the challenges that the enemy brings at us, right? Anytime anything happened, immediately people would gather at the church. Anything that happened in the world, anything that happened in the local community, people would begin gathering in the church because that was the safe space. And that's not the case anymore. Like I say, people hardly know the people who they church with, especially these larger, if you're in a larger church or in a mega church, you may not have a personal relationship with the pastor. You may know very few people unless you're maybe in some type of small group or you just go to a very small church where you even know a lot of the people in the church. So, and that's the way people like it, right? They don't want to have to go to church because and be interacting with all these people because they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want to be asked to do anything. They don't want to be asked for anything. And so, and that's kind of where things are moving. They don't want the interaction. So let's kind of look at some of the things, the issues that we're dealing with in the church. Like I said, I wanted to do this. I thought I would be able, I attempted, preparing this lesson, thinking that I'd be able to do it in one 30-minute session. And I just have too much that I need to say about it. So like I said, I'm going to start it off today, and then hopefully I'm going to finish up all week. Next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'll be talking about different issues within the church. And today I want to start this off by talking about judgment. Because that is one of the biggest issues that we can all probably agree that that people face, that people struggle with in the church. People don't want to be judged. We don't want to be judged, and people get a lot of judgment. There's a lot of judgment that goes on in the church. And really, there's no worse feeling than being judged by somebody else, being made to feel less than, being made to feel unworthy or devalued, or just especially looked upon as like you're undeserving of the blessings of God, right? People don't want to give you their time. They don't want to give you their attention. They don't want to pour into you the way a lot of times you need to be poured into. They don't want to take that time. And really, that judgment is a huge part of what's turning people off. Somebody says something to you, or, you hear something being said to somebody else, and you're like, did they just say that? Did they just, say that to that person, or talk to them that way, get treated that way? And these are the things that are turning people off in the church. I know I've seen it myself. I've been in the church my whole life. I've seen it all. There's really not much I haven't seen. But even though the Bible tells us that we are not to judge, that because with the same manner of judgment that we judge others, it will be judged upon us. The Bible tells us we should not judge others, and yet we do it. So why is this? Why are Christians so judgmental when it comes to other people in the church? Well, first of all, we're human, right? We're all humans, which by default means that we are all imperfect specimens. Therefore, working to get better each and every day. Probably the most accurate explanation, and this just really sort of helped me to deal with how I saw the church. The most accurate explanation that I've ever heard about church is that church is really like a hospital. The church is a hospital, and everyone is there, for some illness or for some reason related around illness, that really sort of stems from the disease of sin, right? No matter what your sin is, no matter what the disease of sin that no matter what it looks like for you, the bottom line is that, we're all struggling with it. And so we're all working to get better and get healed from it, to overcome it, and, to stay healthy and make good decisions behind it so that we can keep the sin disease and sin illnesses out of our lives. Now, the problem is that we're all at different stages of our healing, right? Some of us are, in critical care, right? We're in critical condition, barely making it through life because our sins have overcome us so much. We're struggling so much with our sin issues. Some of us are in the healing stage. Some of us are sort of, past the critical points, and we're in rehab, right? Maybe we're working to just get stronger in it. Like, okay, I've overcome this issue that's been weighing me down, preventing me from being closer to the Lord. Or some of us are there for just like sort of mental therapy, right? To try to keep our head in the right space, to stay close and connected to God. So we're all there to get better, right? We're all there working towards some level of healing so that we can go out into the world and thrive every day. Now, we don't walk into a hospital and make people feel worse about their sicknesses, their illnesses. The sole purpose of a hospital is to help people to get better, to encourage people to get their healing, and to send them back out as close to back at 100% as what they can possibly be. And the church really should function the same way, right? This is how we should look at people coming into the church. We're trying to figure out, what their illness is, what their condition is, and how we can, work on them and help them to get better, or encourage them, or do therapy with them, whatever the situation is, right? Everyone's at different Everyone's at different levels of their healing. And that's kind of like the church should be the same way. The church should be functioning the same way as the hospital. Now, let's look at it this way. Okay, we cannot get better, right? The first part of healing is it starts with assessment, right? You come in, they start asking you what's wrong, they're digging into your life, they're asking you all these questions about, your health and your habits and all these types of things, right? They get really personal at the hospital, right? And then they go so far, if they feel like you're not telling the truth, they go so far as to ask you for your blood and take lab samples and all this stuff. And they'll say, oh, well, we found this, and that, right? They dig deep. They get all into your life. They get all into your business. They get all into your body because they're trying to dig down and figure out what is going wrong, right? What's wrong? What's causing these problems? Because if we can't find the root of the issue, we don't know where to start the healing process. And like I said, the church has to be the same way. We can't work to overcome sin. We can't work to help people overcome sin if we don't dig down and figure out what the real problems are. If we don't acknowledge the issues, then we don't even know where to begin with where to help you. So realistically, there has to be some level of judgment or assessment if we're going to minister to people, because we have to discern what their spiritual condition is, right? We need to know what the spiritual condition is. So that's where we have to start. So we have to discern that. And typically the only way we do that is by what we see and what we hear, because I can't, take your blood and figure out, oh, you're dealing with this sin, right? This is your sin issue. So let's put you over here, right? The church can't do that. We have to, get into your life. We have to talk to you. We have to, get into your business and all that and assess you and look at you and watch you and observe you and all these different things so that, the church can figure out what's going on and figure out where to help you, if we're there to be helped, right? Or get stronger, or whatever reason we're there. The church has a purpose. The church has a purpose. It's not just there to be there. The church has a purpose. And so that's the thing. But so here's the issue, right? This is where the church sort of gets in trouble, right? Where it should stop at the assessment phase of the judgment, it quickly moves into the condemnation phase of judgment, right? So we're no longer just assessing people and finding out what's wrong with them. We are condemning people, right? We're chastising people for, for their sin issues rather than working towards figuring out how to help them. We punish people, for the things that they're doing and for the things that we're detecting in their lives. And so we begin frowning upon them. We begin, saying ugly things to them, talking to them in an ugly tone. We start throwing scriptures at them, making them feel like, well, you should already know this. You should know better. And, all this type of stuff. And we talk about them behind their backs rather than praying for them. We'll gossip about them. We'll isolate them from different parts of the church, separate ourselves from them, all this type of stuff. And before we know it, within minutes of a conversation, we done condemn the person to hell, right? We're like, you're going to hell. There's no hope for you, right? And this is what we see in the church. This is what people feel in the church. And this is what is turning people off from the church and making people not want to go to the church, right? It's no different than the doctor saying, don't bother working on that one because they're not worth saving. They're not worth working on. They're not worth, wasting any medication on, pouring into them. Don't even bother. They're done with. Just send them on their way. Move them out of the world. Move them out of the hospital. Right? It's the same. It's the same feeling. It's the same situation. And so people get to where they don't want to go. They don't want to show up. They don't even want to go because they don't want to have to deal with what might happen. And we hear this even in the hospital. I don't want to go to that hospital. I don't want that doctor telling me this, and that, right? It's the same way. I don't want to go to the church. I don't want them telling me this, and that about, what I need to be doing. Anyway, but that's not fulfilling, right? Our purpose as church people is to fulfill the Great Commission, to share the good news of the gospel. And so when we are to make disciples, and so when we are condemning people rather than helping them, we are pushing them away. We're not doing the work of the ministry, equipping the saints. and all that. So as church people, we have to do better. We have to do better. We see these extremes in churches, right? And there has to be a balance. We see churches where they give all love and no correction. And then we see churches where they give all correction and no love. And people sort of go and gravitate to what they are accustomed to, what they like, or they just avoid it altogether. And so and we have to do better. We have to figure it out. And the church is doing a poor job, I feel, my personal opinion, at trying to figure out how to stop running people off with the way we treat them, So that's just one factor, right? The second is that people mistake correction for judgment. We mistake correction for judgment. We want to show up in the church in our sin issues. We want to show up and we don't want anything to be said about it. We don't want people saying stuff to us about the things that we're doing. So when somebody speaks on it, we're offended, even when it's coming from the pastor, even when he's reading it directly from the word. We get offended, and we see people all the time. The pastor will say something, the person thinks that they're talking directly to him, and they'll get up and walk right out of the church, mad, pissed off, right? Because they don't want to be, they feel like they're being called out, when really the pastor could be just reading from the word, just preaching what God says that they're supposed to say. So, and people get upset. So, but we're called to sharpen each other. We're called to correct each other. It is part of to hold each other accountable. It is part of what we have to do as Christians. It tells us in Ezekiel in chapter 33 that if we know better, and if we know better and we see people, doing in mistake or in sin or whatever, and we don't warn them, right? If we don't let them know that, hey, this is what the word says. This is what what the issues are, and this is what I see within you. Then their blood is on our hands. It tells us that, right? So, but the challenge is, how do we do that gently and in love? Because a lot of us are willing to do the correcting, but it doesn't go over very kindly, right? It doesn't go over very nicely. We can be harsh and brutal even. And like I said, just condemning people to hell, thinking that that's going to help them get better. And maybe for some people that works, but for the majority of the people, especially in these days, it just doesn't, because people want to be talked to. They want to be respected. They want to feel that they matter. They want to feel love. They get enough harsh judgment and criticism from the world, and they don't want to have to go to church, a place that's voluntary, right? To get all this, to receive more criticism. So the goal is to help people grow into grow. And anything that we are working to grow, we have to pour life into. It's just, if you're trying to grow something, that means you have to pour life into it. And when we look at the Bible sort of explains us, the people, as a harvest. He explains that we are a harvest, right? He says the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. And so if we think about this, let's break down this concept of harvest. If we are the harvest, that means, think about a farm, right? Whatever you're harvesting, plants, trees, whatever you're harvesting, you have to pour life into that farm if you're going to see it thrive and nourish. But the problem is, we don't want to put in the work, right? We don't want to put in the work that is required to grow a harvest. If you've ever tried to grow anything, even just a single plant in your house, from a seedling, right? Do you know that it requires your time, your care, your attention, your nourishment? It requires daily attention sometimes. And people don't want to do that. And sometimes it can take years before we see years of pouring nourishment into a farm before we really begin to see it start to thrive. There's phases of farming, right? There's the prepping phase where you got to prep the land and, till the soil and all this sort of stuff. Then there's the planting phase where we're getting everything in the ground, right? We're starting to just pour the seeds into the ground. And then there's the sprouting phase, right? Where it begins to just sprout out. It's like, oh, okay, I'm here. And then we go through the growth and the maturing phase. And then even once we get to that growth and maturing phase, they'll have seasons where we may not see any fruit. right? The first couple of seasons, you may not see a single bit of fruit. And then it may go from having no fruit, a season of no fruit, to a season of having fruit, but the fruit is not good, right? The first couple seasons may not be so good. And then before you get to a season where you may start to get some good fruit, it's like, okay, here we go. This is going to be the year, right? This is the year that we're going to get this good fruit. And so, but yet it may just be a little bit of good fruit, right? You may get, like say you're growing an orange tree, it may just be a little bit of good fruit before you get to a season where you've got a lot of it, where it's really flourishing. So all of that requires watering and pruning and, periods of illness, right? And struggle. And sometimes, the farm will get diseased or all sort of stuff. The bottom line is that it all takes time. And it's the kind of time that we don't want to give in the church. So we have to change our outlook about how we see the church. We have to, pick up patience and put down pride, and the pride of wanting to prove a point and, get our egos in the way, allow our egos to get away. Like, you're going to listen to me. You're going to do what I say do. It's going to be this way or no way, or you can't be here in the church. We have to get rid of that sort of language in the church, because if we're not, we're going to create a barrier. And what does that do? That ultimately causes us to lose the crop. We're going to lose the crop if we don't take care of it, if we don't nourish it, if we don't, do the things that it requires, and we're going to lose the crop. It's a delicate balance. It's a delicate balance. So we can be firm and unwavering without, being ugly. We can tell the truth, but we need to learn to give it in love. We have to learn to be, gentle and loving and kind and supportive and all that. So how do we do that, right? What does that look like when we're trying to correct somebody? So I'm just going to go over I'll give you a simple example, and then I'll give you, allow you to create your own example. So let's look at somebody who dresses. This is a very common issue, one I have dealt with many times myself, where people are looking at how do you dress in the church, right? How a young woman may come in dressing, or even an older woman. It doesn't even matter, right? Short skirts, whatever the situation is. Right now, we've seen this a million times. That young woman or older woman walks in the church, they got that short dress on, and faces start frowning, and people start looking like, did she not just walk up in here looking like that? And blah, 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 right? She's being called a Jezebel, a hussy, and, just came from the club, the whole nine, right? All of it. They talking about it. They're talking about the woman in every kind of way, no kind of way except in the men. Sorry, you're late. No problem. Good to see you, Harrison. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. So how do we address this young woman who has walked into the church dressed inappropriately, right? Showing everything, got everything hanging out. They're ready to condemn her. The women are ready to cover her up and practically throw her out, and send her back home and tell her to go change and come back, right? So we've seen this. I've had this very thing happen to me. I'm not even gonna lie. I remember being young. And I went to a church, and I had a dress on that had a slit up the side, right? And I walked in that church, and I tell you, this woman must have just had a hissy fit when she saw the slit in my dress. And so she got so mad at me. She slapped my leg. She slapped my thigh, and I thought, my goodness, what on earth, right? Now, this is a church that I was frequented, so yeah, the woman knew me very well. She knew my mother, blah blah blah. But yeah, she was very offended by the slit in my dress. Pissed me off so bad, right? I'm young. I was in high school at the time. Pissed me off so bad. I'm angry. Like, you can't tell me how to dress. You can't tell me what to wear. Blah blah blah. So I get mad. We have to come back to church that next night. That same night. That was early in the service. So I go home and put on a dress that has a higher slit, right? I put on one that has a higher slit because I'm mad, right? Because you don't slap my leg. I'm not concerned about how you feel about how I dress, right? Good morning, The Right Way. How are you doing? Good to see you this morning. Good to see you this morning. We're talking about church folk. So So needless to say, that approach did not work well for me. It didn't work well for me, and I'm sure it doesn't work well for others. And we see, women respond in all kind of ways to women who come in dressed as hussies or whatever they want to call them in the church. So what would have been a better approach, right? What would have been a better approach to someone who is, a young woman who's walking in the church, who has not, understood why it is that the word tells us that we should dress modestly and all this stuff, right? My pride and my ego is in the way. What would have been a better approach? So here is what would have been a better approach, right? If she had come to me and said, I remember a time when I was young and I used to love, looking nice and dressing up and doing, feeling beautiful and all that, and feeling like in my mind that it doesn't matter how I dress, I should be able to dress however I want to dress. Until one day I was, sitting in a Bible study or a testimony service, whatever, right? And a man stood up and talked about what his struggle was and how he was struggling to, overcome his issue of sexual sin, pornography, or lust, or whatever it is he's dealing with. And he really wants to learn to start looking at women the way that God created them, the beautiful beings, and respect them in the way that God created them. And he was and he felt like the church would be a safe space for him to be able to come and worship and, be able to learn to look at women in the way that God wants women to be looked at. And he said that he was having a hard time. He was having a hard time being in the church because he would come and see women in the church who were looking just like the women outside that he was, lusting after, dressing like that, and he was still struggling. He was still having a hard time being able to stay focused on the Lord and staying focused on worship and trying to look at women in a respectful way because, so much of their body was being exposed. And that was the very thing that he had issue with, trying to develop self-control. But the word, and that's why the word tells us that we are to dress modestly, that we are to adorn ourselves and our bodies and in a respectful way, that we are to look at our bodies as a temple, as the temple where God lives, and that we aren't to look like the world, but we're to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? And so if we're all here trying to get better, we don't want to be the stumbling block for someone else's issue, right? So if all I have to do is make sure that my intimate parts are covered up, that I'm not overexposing myself to someone who may be struggling with trying to look at women in a healthy way or respectful way, then I don't want to be that stumbling block for them. And so that helped me to change my outlook about how I feel that I should be able to dress, at least while I'm here in the church. So just think about that. But we all have our struggles and we don't know what people's issues or what their struggles are. So, we should take into consideration that this may, even though it's not a struggle for me, it may be a struggle for someone else. And I love my brother. I love my sister. And I don't want to be the one that causes them to fall. I don't want to be the one that causes them to fall into temptation just because of how I dress, right? What approach do you think would have went over better with me, right? Now, I know I said a lot of words, but I could have, shortened it or said it differently. But the bottom line is that it's a different approach, right? She came to me and slapped me on my thigh and told me to go home and get changed, right? But had she explained to me that my dress might be causing someone to struggle with the temptation of wanting to, be with me or undressing me, with their eyes, then I would have been able to look at that from a whole different perspective, without condemning, right? Correction without condemnation. And that's how the church needs to go about approaching people with these issues of sin that we see in the church. So how can we do that through, how can we do that, like with whatever issue that we're having? So there are a couple of key things, no matter what the issue is. This is sort of my approach when I'm trying to correct someone in love without condemning them for, what they're doing or what they're not doing. No matter what the issue is, start by making it personal, right? Start by making it personal. Find some kind of way that even if your sin is not their sin, talk about your sin issue, right? But put your sin issue in the situation instead of theirs. I remember when I used to struggle with this. I remember when I had a hard time with this. I used to think about this, and my thought about it was this, and I never thought about who might be affected, who might be hurt, who I might be causing them to stumble, because I only cared about it the way I cared about it. I never thought about how anybody else may think about it, right? And yet God tells us this, right? So, and then give them the scripture, right? This is what the word says about it. And then if I've made a commitment to live my life according to the word, according to his, trying to be like him, I've made a commitment to accept him into my life, make him Lord over my life, and I'm striving to be more and more like him every day, then I want to make sure that I'm lining up everything about what I'm doing is in good representation of him. And therefore, I need to be willing to make changes, to make some adjustments about the things that I'm doing wrong, so that not only am I not hurting myself, but I'm not hurting others. I'm not causing others to fall. So keep those thoughts in your mind the next time you find yourself wanting to do this or think this about a situation, and give them some encouragement. And if you're struggling with it, just let me know. I'll walk with you. I'll be willing to walk with you through this thing that you're struggling with, through this issue of sin that you're dealing with, because it's not easy, right? I'm not asking you to do something that I haven't had to do or that I haven't had to overcome. And I'm not asking you to do it alone. I'm letting you know I'm here for you. I'm here to support you through it. I'm here to love on you. I'm here not to judge you, but to help you through it, right? It's a whole different approach. So no matter the sin, no matter what the issue is, approach it from a personal perspective, and then let people know what you used to do, how you used to do it, why you used to do it, why you used to think that way. Give them the scripture. Let them know that we've made a commitment to be more like Christ. And then from there, if we're being more like Christ, that means we have to be willing to make some adjustments and some changes. And that's not always an easy process. So because I know it's not easy, just know that I'm here to help you through it. If you need help, if you want help, I'm here to pray with you. You can call me. You can talk to me. Whatever the situation is, offer to be with them and support them through the sin rather than condemning them through the issue, right? So that's just a good approach that you can do. And then end it with, if you don't call me, in the meantime, I will be checking up on you, right? Even if they never call you, if they never come to you, just know that I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be checking up on you. I'm going to be, trying to keep in touch with you, right? Just a very effective way to lovingly correct someone without condemning them, right? So, and that's how we can move away from this sort of judgment, this negative idea of judgment, a totally different approach. But all it takes is a willingness, right? We have to be willing to put in the work. If we're the harvesters and the harvest is out there, we have to be willing to pour into these people. We have to be willing to love on these people, nourish them, walk with them, give them our time, give them our attention, encourage them to grow. And prayerfully, someone is doing the same for us. Because just because you may have been in the church longer, right? Maybe you're in the therapy phase of your illness, where somebody is still in the critical stages of their illnesses. You still need people in your life. So as people are working to help you get better and keep you on the right track, we should be working to help others to get better and get them on the right track. And that's the function and sole purpose of the church. That's what the church is there for. So we have to move away from this thought and idea of judgment, and put ourselves in their shoes. Think about how we would want God to approach us, and be willing to do the labor if we want to see the results. Okay. So that's all I have this morning for you all. I didn't want to go too far over my 30-minute mark. And I really wanted to kind of dig into this church folk issue that we're having. So today was about judgment. Next week, I'm going to be talking about hypocrisy, the hypocrisy that we see in the church. I'm going to be talking about forgiveness, the issues of forgiveness that we see in the church. And I'm going to be talking about the issues of kindness and love, where we struggle to show kindness and love in the church. All right. So I'm kind of digging a little deeper into this and spending more time on this because I feel it's just that much more important. It's just that important. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say a prayer. I hope you all learned something. Go back and catch the beginning if you missed it. And I'm going to say a prayer and then we're going to head out. Okay. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for loving us. Just so gracious and loving and for being who you are in our lives. Father, you loved on us, you cared for us, you show us grace and mercy each and every day. You do the things that sometimes we are unwilling to do for others. You pour into us, you nurture us, you water us, you prune us, Father. You do everything that you can to get us to the place where we are producing fruit in our lives. So, Father, help us to be willing to do that, to stop looking at people in judgment, to stop condemning them to hell, stop, isolating them from the church and isolating them from people, but to work to be a loving church, a place where people can come and have a place of refuge, see love and receive the love and support that they're seeking, that they aren't receiving out in the world. Lord, just touch their lives, touch our lives, change our hearts, heal these heart conditions that we're struggling with so that we can be willing to help others. We're supposed to look like you and not like the world. And when people see us, they should see a difference. They should feel a difference. They should feel the love and kindness and grace and mercy of you coming off of our lips and our tongues and through our hugs and whatever else that we're able to do for them and in any way that we're able to help them, Father, so that they will not be shunned away from the church, but to seek the church, to seek you in the church so that they can get better and thrive and bring others into the fold. We're called to be disciples. We're called to grow this ministry, to grow the church. So, Father, just help us to keep that in our minds. We thank you for who you are. We love you. Bless each person in the chat. Bless those that will be catching the replay. These things I ask in your son, Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys. So we'll be back here next week on Monday morning. I will be here talking about hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, right? All these hypocrites in the church. So you all have a wonderful, wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. I'll probably be on tomorrow night, hopefully. And I'm not sure what it'll be just yet, but I'll probably be on tomorrow night. And I'll see you all next week. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye. Be the light. Be the light.